To me, Joe Yabuki stands as one of the most compelling and well-written characters ever conceived in the history of manga and anime. I don't say it just to sound dramatic either. His character is one that could be said to have inspired an entire generation. Joe's story is really a classic tale of the human spirit, a testament to the importance of having hope and always looking to rise above your situation, no matter how bad things seem. The Ashito no Joe series has truly stood the test of time. There's a reason why it continues to be referenced by countless anime and manga across various genres, and you don't need to be a sports or boxing fan to understand the appeal of the series. In fact, it would be a mistake to label Ashito no Joe as your typical sports fiction. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. How about we start from the very beginning? We get our first glimpse of Joe from the opening shot of the series, a lonely wanderer surrounded by piles of garbage and debris. He whistles to himself a soft, melancholy tune. It's not exactly a cheerful or even optimistic start to a series that centers itself on this idea of having hope for a better future. Ashito no Joe translates to Tomorrow's Joe, in case you weren't aware. But I find this almost mournful introduction to the story to be quite profound. You have to consider the fact that the series was made during post-war Japan. This was a time where many of the country's people were still coming to terms with the devastating losses of the Second World War. So while this is an unconventional beginning, especially for a sports fiction, it is 100% authentic and explains why Ashito no Joe resonated with the Japanese people. Eventually, our protagonist finds his way into the slums of Sanya. It is here in this mundane and rundown place that Joe begins his journey, but the path ahead is far from straightforward. You see, Ashito no Joe is not your typical sports manga or anime, which if you're familiar with the genre, then you know how things typically go, where the main character is shown to develop a deep love for the sport being portrayed early on. But not in this series. In fact, we don't see any actual boxing until much later on. Instead, we meet Joe at his lowest point. Unlike the title of the series, he has no time to think about tomorrow. Only today, only this moment. He's a wild animal who's quick to anger and prone to violent fits of rage. There's no sense of hope here, only darkness. What I like about the start to the story, and just the way it handles its characters in general, is that we're not given any unnecessary exposition or flashbacks to justify why a character behaves in the way that they do. With Joe, we can only presume he is how he is because of his past. Maybe his upbringing or a traumatic event, something to do with the war perhaps. Either way, we're not told anything outright. So how did this rude, lazy, and dishonest delinquent manage to capture the hearts and minds of an entire nation? Well, let's find out. Joe's transformation really begins through a chance meeting with Danpei, a homeless alcoholic who can't help but drool, mumble, and cry himself to sleep. Clearly, he's looking to forget some painful memories. Maybe haunted by his own past, he has no choice but to keep drinking. He's a man who's hit rock bottom in every meaning of the phrase. And when Danpei first crosses paths with Joe, he behaves in a disgraceful manner that leaves him knocked down onto the ground. It's here that we catch the first glimmers of Danpei's resurgence, the sparks of a fire long thought extinguished. He senses a potential in the kid and implores him right away to take up boxing.
Boxing?
But Joe's not impressed and ends up walking away. This isn't the end, however, because soon after, both Danpei and the audience get to see Joe in his natural environment for the first time. He runs into a group of Yakuza thugs from the Onihime gang. They have a young girl with them named Sachi, who they claim stole money from them, and are now looking for her father, probably to shake him down. These gangsters are ruthless, going as far as smacking her around in front of the entire town. Eventually, Joe has had enough. It's here that we catch sight of the good that exists within Joe, the makings of a hero. For Danpei, he sees redemption, a second shot at life, a hope for tomorrow. From this moment on, Danpei develops an unwavering belief in Joe. His intention, although selfishly motivated, is to turn this troubled kid into a world champion. It doesn't matter how many times Joe rebukes him, Danpei remains persistent. Showing a remarkable resolve, he even risks his own life to protect Joe when the Onihime group ambushes them later on. It takes a long time for Joe to even take the idea of boxing seriously. and he only accepts the old man's help in order to shut him up. So he becomes Joe's mentor figure, but only through sheer stubbornness and force of will. When you think of classic stories involving mentors, you don't really conjure up an image of someone like Danpei. Typically, the sort of mentor figures that we're used to tend to appear more wise and composed. But this is exactly why I love Ashita no Joe so much, because these unfortunate and imperfect characters feel so real. Danpei is flawed, but that's also what makes him a better mentor for Joe. He has nothing else left in his life but this one miracle kid, and so he commits to him fully. Now that Joe has given in to Danpei's wishes, you might think finally, we're gonna see him turn over a new leaf. But Joe has no interest in some far-fetched dream of becoming a world champion. You have to keep in mind, he's essentially lived his entire life out on the streets. He's never had a place that he could call home. We're given further confirmation of this later on in the series. An orphan who ran away from every single home he was placed into. So now he's forced to anchor down, to stop running away as he's always done so before. You can't expect an overnight change in someone like that. I know, in your typical sports anime or manga, the main character is shown to commit fully to this new life that they found, this new calling. But Ashita no Joe is not like this, okay? Ashita no Joe doesn't even make boxing a priority until later on in the story. Instead, we're given time to understand Joe's state of mind, to see how broken he is. He's someone who's full of anger and resentment for the world. Joe's character does metamorphosize over time, albeit very slowly. The series is true to life in the way it addresses how people undergo transformation. It's never done in a single leap, but rather through several small steps. You might make mistakes, suffer a few setbacks, but you keep on pushing forward. That's real life. The one thing that never changes about Joe is his self-destructive nature. It's the one constant that's present from the very start. It's not just a flaw that's written into his character for the sake of making him seem cooler. He struggles with real inner demons, and so his journey is as much psychological as it is physical. That's why the story doesn't jump straight into boxing. There's no quick fix training montage that's going to resolve all of the internal conflicts that exist within Joe. And I love this aspect of the series. It doesn't just expect us to care. Joe's passion for boxing develops gradually. At first, we only see a few flickers. But the spark that really ignites the fire within him comes from Rikiishi Toru, one of the most beloved characters in the series, and for good reason. However, when he and Joe first meet, things turn immediately hostile. Up until their encounter, Joe has been able to easily overpower and outfight anyone unlucky enough to come across his path. But against Rikiishi, Joe is made to feel completely and utterly powerless. Sure, his style of street brawling has served him well up until now, but against a seasoned and disciplined fighter like Rikiishi, he stands no chance. In their first fight, he's left humiliated and crying on the ground. It's in this moment that the fuse is lit. Joe's unable to reconcile losing to anyone else. He just can't move on from that fact. So boxing becomes his one chance for revenge, to try and reclaim his honor. He therefore pursues boxing, not for some pure or virtuous reason, but because of what it can offer him. It's a tool, a weapon, a means to an end. So Rikiishi unintentionally sets Joe on the path to his true calling, planting the seeds of what will one day grow into a profound and sincere love for the sport of boxing. This is one of the best rivalries I have ever seen depicted in a story before. They start off as sworn enemies, but then this hatred between the two develops into a form of mutual respect. In fact, it's through fighting in the ring that they get to see more of the ways they're truly alike. It's this rivalry that binds and actuates them to continue pushing beyond their limits, to go the extra mile. How else could they face each other in the ring otherwise? Joe faces many challenges and obstacles in his journey to the top. There's never a moment to waste, and there's always danger lurking right around the corner for him. And while he can be said to have finally found his purpose in life, a place where he belongs, people that he can call family, there's still a deep sorrow within him, especially later on as he takes one fighter after the next. He can't lose, but at the same time winning is shown to take a toll on him. You see, Joe's actually quite empathetic in the way that he thinks. Each boxer Joe faces carries their own dreams and aspirations with them into the ring, and so whenever he wins, he's essentially shattering those dreams, bringing them falling down right onto the canvas. This is best illustrated in his treatment of Wolf Kaneguchi, an up-and-coming bantamweight boxer who was forcefully retired by Joe after trading blow for blow. Leading up to the fight, there was a lot of trash talking and full-on animosity between the two. But later on in the series, Wolf is seen making his living by being a hired thug for one of the local Yakuza gangs. He then gets himself into a very dangerous situation and is only rescued thanks to the intervention of Joe. In fact, Joe even becomes enraged on his behalf when Wolf's ability as a boxer is ridiculed. Joe is shown to feel a responsibility to all those he's come up against in the past, a form of survivor's guilt perhaps. One of the greatest scenes in the anime adaptation has to be the pure white ash scene, which brings us back full circle to this idea of Joe's self-destructive nature.
ほんの瞬間にせよ、眩しいほどに真っ赤に燃え上がるんだ。そして、後には真っ白な灰だけが残る。燃えかすなんか残りゃしない。真っ白な灰だけだ。
Although you can say now that he fights for a higher purpose, he still doesn't know when enough is enough. Or rather, he doesn't care. He cannot live half-heartedly. Not only would it be disrespectful to those who've come before him, but also it goes against his whole philosophy. For Joe, a short life of greatness is preferable to a long one of mediocrity, where dreams are only partially realized. Joe's story is a testament to the idea that redemption is possible for anybody, no matter how far they may have fallen. We go from early on in his life, when he was just as much a villain as he was a hero. We get to see how his tumultuous relationship with Danpei evolves over time, from when they constantly fought to the blossoming of what can only be described as a father-son relationship. One aspect about him that's evident from early on is how special his connection is with the children of the slums. There's this scene when he's still nothing more than a petty criminal. He's plotting a scheme to defraud people out of money with the help of the children, and gives them this really elaborate speech on how he actually plans to use this money to help fix up the slums by building playgrounds, hospitals, and even care homes. It's a touching moment in which we get to see a vulnerable and innocent side of him that he tries so hard to hide. But it's also an important moment because it really shows us that Joe is a man full of contradictions. It's natural to me that a story like Ashita no Joe would be made at a time when people were looking for nothing more than a reason to have hope. Joe in a sense personifies hope, and it's why people are drawn to him. He not only manages to overcome every challenge that comes his way, but he also relentlessly pursues his ideals, never straying from them, so that even in the end, when he reaches the state of being just like pure white ash, really, a transcendent state of self-destruction, we can't help but accept it. Joe is an inspiration to live life on your own terms, to never surrender, and to always look for a better tomorrow.